Verses 22 to 34. But if the homicide was not voluntary, nor done designedly, if it was without enmity, or lying in wait, v. 22, not seeing the person or not seeking his harm, v. 23, which our law calls chance medley, or homicide per infortuniam through misfortune, in this case there were cities of refuge appointed for the manslayer to flee to. By our law this incurs a forfeiture of goods, but a pardon is granted of course upon the special matter found. Concerning the cities of refuge the law was that, if a man killed another, in these cities he was safe, and under the protection of the law, till he had his trial before the congregation, that is, before the judges in open court. If he neglected thus to surrender himself, it was at his peril. If the avenger of blood met him elsewhere, or overtook him loitering in his way to the city of refuge, and slew him, his blood was upon his own head, because he did not make use of the security which God had provided for him. If, upon trial, it were found to be willful murder, the city of refuge should no longer be a protection to him. It was already determined, "Thou shalt take him from my altar, that he may die." Ex 21:14. But if it were found to be by error or accident, and that the stroke was given without any design upon the life of the person slain or any other, then the manslayer should continue safe in the city of refuge, and the avenger of blood might not meddle with him. V. 25. There he was to remain in banishment from his own house and patrimony till the death of the high priest, and, if at any time he went out of that city or the suburbs of it, he put himself out of the protection of the law, and the avenger of blood, if he met him, might slay him. V. 26:28. Now, by the preservation of the life of the manslayer God would teach us that men ought not to suffer for that which is rather their unhappiness than their crime, rather the act of providence than their own act, for God delivered him into his hand. Ex 21:13. By the banishment of the manslayer from his own city, and his confinement to the city of refuge, where he was in a manner a prisoner, God would teach us to conceive a dread and horror of the guilt of blood, and to be very careful of life, and always afraid lest by oversight or negligence we occasion the death of any. By the limiting of the time of the offender's banishment to the death of the high priest, an honor was put upon that sacred office. The high priest was to be looked upon as so great a blessing to his country that when he died their sorrow upon that occasion should swallow up all other resentments. The cities of refuge being all of them Levites' cities, and the high priest being the head of that tribe, and consequently having a peculiar dominion over these sites, those that were confined to them might properly be looked upon as his prisoners, and so his death must be their discharge. It was, as it were, at his suit that the delinquent was imprisoned, and therefore at his death it fell. Actio moritur cum persona, the suit expires with the party. Ainsworth has another notion of it, that as the high priests, while they lived, by their service and sacrificing made atonement for sin, wherein they prefigured Christ's satisfaction, so, at their death, those were released that had been exiled for casual murder, which typified redemption in Israel. By the abandoning of the prisoner to the avenger of blood, in case he at any time went out of the limits of the city of refuge, they were taught to adhere to the methods which infinite wisdom prescribed for their security. It was for the honor of a remedial law that it should be so strictly observed. How can we expect to be saved if we neglect the salvation, which is indeed a great salvation? Here is a great deal of good gospel couched under the type and figure of the cities of refuge, and to them the apostle seems to allude when he speaks of our fleeing for refuge to the hope set before is, Hebrews 6:18, and being found in Christ, Philosophy 3:9. We never read in the history of the Old Testament of any use made of these cities of refuge, any more than of other such institutions, which yet, no doubt, were made use of upon the occasions intended. Only we read of those that, in dangerous cases, took hold of the horns of the altar. 1 Key 150, 228, for the altar, wherever that stood, was, as it were, the capital city of refuge. But the law concerning these cities was designed both to raise and to encourage the expectations of those who looked for redemption in Israel, which should be to those who were convinced of sin, and in terror by reason of it, as the cities of refuge were to the manslayer. Observe. There were several cities of refuge, and they were so appointed in several parts of the country that the manslayer, wherever he dwelt in the land of Israel, might in half a day reach one or other of them. So, though there is but one Christ appointed for our refuge, yet, wherever we are, he is a refuge at hand, a very present help, for the word is nigh us and Christ in the word. The manslayer was safe in any of these cities, so in Christ believers that flee to him, and rest in him, are protected from the wrath of God and the curse of the law. There is no condemnation to those that are in Christ Jesus, Rom 8:1. Who shall condemn those that are thus sheltered? They were all Levites' cities. It was a kindness to the poor prisoner that though he might not go up to the place where the ark was, yet he was in the midst of Levites, who would teach him the good knowledge of the Lord, and instruct him how to improve the providence he was now under. It might also be expected that the Levites would comfort and encourage him, and bid him welcome, so it is the work of gospel ministers to bid poor sinners welcome to Christ, and to assist and counsel those that through grace are in him. Even strangers and sojourners, though they were not native Israelites, might take the benefit of these cities of refuge, v. 15. So in Christ Jesus no difference is made between Greek and Jew, even the sons of the stranger that by faith flee to Christ shall be safe in him. Even the suburbs or borders of the city were a sufficient security to the offender, v. 26-27. So there is virtue even in the hem of Christ's garment for the healing and saving of poor sinners. If we cannot reach to a full assurance, we may comfort ourselves in a good hope through grace. The protection which the manslayer found in the city of refuge was not owing to the strength of its walls, or gates, or bars, but purely to the divine appointment. So it is the word of the gospel that gives souls safety in Christ, for him hath God the Father sealed. If the offender was ever caught struggling out of the borders of his city of refuge, or stealing home to his house again, he lost the benefit of his protection, and lay exposed to the avenger of blood. So those that are in Christ must abide in Christ, for it is at their peril if they forsake him and wander from him. Drawing back is to perdition.